Meanwhile, I got that Chronicles of Narnia behind me that I'm going to have to like mute myself in and out of.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our show.
All right. So we're actually going to begin now. Wait.
That's right.
All right. So welcome back to, I guess this is episode 2. It's like episode 2.5. We kind of have another one. Yeah, it's about to be posted. Anyways, happens in ad tech. We are here with Josh Sternberg. Please tell me I said that right.
It is.
And we're here to talk. I've never had a chance to do it. I'm incredibly excited to talk industry journalism, ad tech journalism, it feels like especially timely moment for the industry, but like in your life as well. But yeah, let's kick it off. Where do we want to start? Eric.
Well, yeah, Josh, you had 2 really big pieces that I think were really talked about quite a bit in the community and the whole ecosystem about one of them about really sort of the impact of coronavirus monetization, keywords being blocked. So all the challenges and all of the impact to business. So in the buy sell process and obviously through a lot of ad tech. And
that's
another really
clicks are up, but money is down one.
Correct. Yeah.
The good old publisher paradox.
The publisher
paradox, especially news publishers. I mean, the best days for news are some of the worst days for monetization.
Yeah. So, what did you sort of discover along the way there, sort of building up to that piece, and what were some of the insights that you learned, having talked to so many people about the impact?
So I'm going to come back to this from a perhaps more roundabout approach. The thing that really has been at top of mind these days is the idea that for the last 15 or so years, media companies have had the race for scale, right? Let's get as big as we can get. Let's get as large amounts of traffic as possible. And that is how we are going to justify our existence.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt so early,
no, go ahead.
But do you think is some amount of that to blame for VC funding entering this arena and, in the BuzzFeed Vice kind of way where like you have to show scale and you have to show growth quick?
Absolutely. We are not a patient industry, right?
So true. Yeah.
And the lack of patience leads to this stuff. It's like the weird thing is like as I think about the broad industry, right? Like you bucket out as newspaper, so print, right? Newspaper, magazines. You've got digital pure plays. You've got TV, and you look how all of these approach making money at its root, right? We have the ad-based model, but those eyeballs are not weighted the same, right? So Ryan, you go to the Atlantic, that eyeball is worth different amount of money than going to BuzzFeed, which is different.
Hopefully more.
Than going to ABC News, right? And the weird thing that I always couldn't square is that like if you're trying to take that TV model, that scale is going to mean the more eyeballs, the more money. But you were never really to get that equation right on digital. Why would you keep doing it?
Well, and it doesn't even work on the TV model. I mean,
not anymore.
Nightly news has been a loss leader for networks forever. I mean, it was a joke on the network, the movie. Oh.
Sternberg,
and he's back. Yeah, it was I mean, the soft news morning pays for the hard news nights, and that's
And
constantly
not
what it's
just
been.
and not and not just the 3 hour, like, so, with the morning news, like, their first hour is usually where brands are like, well, we'll give you money for it, but we want other things with it. It's those other hours where brands are able to introduce their messaging in more, let's call them, sponsory ways. Because that news between the 7 and 8 o'clock hours, that's where the news is traditionally, and the model has changed slightly. But this idea of the race of this race to scale, going back to your initial question, I mean, it just screwed up so many things and lots of thinking. Because when you're racing to scale, you're trying to figure out, all right, well, what can I inject to get to that scale? And I'm sure, like, you guys see this all the time, right? Like, how much fraud do you see on a daily basis? And why is that fraud there? Is it because it's easy to do, or it's because it's going to goose up numbers for folks?
I mean, I know there are some companies out there that are afraid to perform anti-fraud measures for fear of what it does to their scale. I do know that exists, which is a terrifying thing to think about.
Yeah. So as we see this race for scale at a time when advertisers are pulling back budgets, and look, it's not a direct one-to-one cause relation. Sorry, my brain is jello.
Totally get it.
Not a direct one-to-one relationship, right? Because the agencies play a big role in this. They have payments that are ridiculously long, right? Like, you get a deal today, you're not going to get paid for anywhere between 90 and 180 days. So if you're a publisher, how are you going to make money, right? Even though that agency is sitting on that cash that they got from their client, so that they can collect the interest, so that they can pay their people, right? Look, the whole entire media industry is just a giant scam. And the ability to navigate this is going to show which companies are not as scammy. You're going to see some big named digital publications cease to be when this is all done.
Josh, you talked a little bit about some of the companies that are employed or used to block certain keywords, and obviously there was some trade association or some help that some folks were really trying to bring in to the situation once people realized a lot of brands and advertisers were starting to target away or start to block certain terms. What did you sort of learn about that process with all the tools that were being used?
I mean, one, it's not surprising that advertisers didn't want to have their ads run against stories about pandemic and death and virus. But I also think it's a lazy way of thinking, right?
I was going to say, I was like, it feels weird that that's the time they care about context.
Right. So, and that's why I prefaced this with media is a scam, right? Also, like, think about this. We know that display ads don't work, right? For what's the rate now? Was it 0.1%? Is that the click-through rate?
You're not going to get a high click-through, but all those there are a lot of very highly valued attribution companies or companies that dabble in attribution that would tell you it's more than the click.
Right. But we've also developed banner blindness. Like, we don't see ads. People have ad blockers. So you put these pieces of the puzzle together and you're like, wait a minute. Like, if I'm a brand, I'm okay with having my ad run right before the president's press conference or right after the president's press conference. I'm okay with my ad running on unsavory sites. I'm not okay if there's a story that has to deal with a pandemic and people are not in the mood to advertise, to buy what you're selling, in the 1 in 1,000 chance that they are actually going to click through that. Like, the logic isn't there. And it's not there because people don't think and they don't care. Like, it's just,
I've never been one to believe that, like, it's such a, you can't have it both ways. You can't tell me that I'm only buying audience, but wait, this context could be harmful to my brand. Well, then that presupposes that there is a context that is positive for your brand, regardless of audience.
that there's an even other presupposition there, that people are actually doing the mental arithmetic to associate your ad on that page. Right?
And like, other than pure context, so your ad on Breitbart, someone, like, it doesn't matter what the article is about. The article could be a fantastically glowing piece about, I don't know, something everyone agrees on, how Meryl Streep is a great actor. But like, it, because it's on Breitbart, that is the thing that matters the most, the context.
Yeah, like, again, like, if I am reading a news story, it doesn't matter what ad shows up. Like, I'm not, like, I don't, it doesn't affect me as a reader. Maybe, look, use case of one idiot, who knows, right? But at the same time, you know, like, to me, it's a play off of that old saw that, do you know what an industry standard is? It's just a lie that everyone agrees upon. And here it's like, well, right, why do we agree upon this? Now, if you are underwriting something, right, you're like, Vox's Explainer, brought to you by McDonald's. As a reader, I can make the assumption that McDonald's is supporting this content, as opposed to seeing a 250 by 250 ad somewhere on the page. There's not a logical way that we're doing this business, because people are not logical and this business is not logical.
So before because we can get down this for a long way, I actually want to take a step back, because I never had a chance to interview a journalist. So I just want to start, like, no one goes to college to do what me or Eric do. So no, I don't imagine anyone goes to a journalism school to be in a media industry trade. Maybe, possibly, I guess, like,
So
David Carr.
I didn't go to journalism school.
So how did you get in this?
So the 20-year story into 30 seconds. I am a failed musician. I was in a jazz rock improv band when I was in college, and we were fine, but not good, to the point where the input matched the perceived output in terms of becoming a rock star. So when we dissolved the band, I was in graduate school at the time, because I had entered the workforce in the .com recession. And so I went back to school and I just fell in love with academia. So after graduate school, I was a professor for a couple of years, moved from New Jersey to Brooklyn to live with my girlfriend, because it didn't make sense to, our relationship was at a part where it's either, you know, we break up or we figure out how to live together, and she wasn't living in New Jersey. So I moved into New York, had to find a job because it wasn't viable to continue teaching in New Jersey, crossing the East River and the Hudson River. Tripped into public relations, was in public relations for a few years, but I started writing. Lehman imploded. I got laid off from the agency that I was at. Started my own communications consultancy for a few years, but also continued to write. Did some freelance writing for Mashable, which led to the Huff Post, which led to Ryan, your publication, writing for the Atlantic, and then
Hey,
that got
I didn't know that.
yeah, that got me a full-time staff writer's gig at Digiday, and I covered media at Digiday for a few years. Then I got a phone. What's
Actually,
that?
which is where we met.
That's where we met. That's right. And then I got a phone call from the chief revenue officer at the Washington Post at the time saying, "Hey, I've been reading your stuff about native advertising. We need to do something. Jeff Bezos bought us a few months ago. Do you want to come build and run this thing?" And I said, "Sure, let's try it." So I did that for a little while. Then I got snatched up by NBC News to do the same thing, but at scale with a TV network behind me. That was great until it wasn't. I got laid off, needed to find a job, meandered through the wilderness for 10 months, and then landed at Adweek. And now I'm back in the wilderness.
That was the part that we hadn't got to yet, but yeah, and very recently,
Yeah, Friday.
which again, I am incredibly sorry to hear. This is
Same. And look, it stinks, right? Getting laid off stinks. Not having the daily routine stinks. Not having paycheck stinks. Not having health insurance in a global pandemic stinks. But there are many, many, many more people worse off than I am right now. You know, let's call a spade a spade. I'm a white Jewish man in media. I'll find something. And if not, Amazon's hiring warehouse people. Instacart is hiring delivery people. Like, there are jobs. I can do something. Nothing is beneath me.
still,
I'd like
that's
to
a
say,
pretty fantastic mindset to have. Regardless,
look,
I like to consider myself a pretty like borderline normal person, and that I don't think this fresh I would have as clean a view, a worldview as you do. So
like I said, this isn't the first time that I've been laid off. When I got laid off from NBC, 2 weeks prior to that, I found out that I was having my second kid. So I don't know. It's not like this is good or normal, but I can navigate this as best I can. And again, like, worst comes to worst, like you do what you have to do. We are, there are jobs everywhere, and if it means doing something that I didn't want to do, but I need to, the needs take over the wants. Hopefully I can go a couple months if need be, not 10 months. I can't do 10 months again. I go crazy, especially with a 5.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. But like, look, there's freelance opportunities, thought leadership crap. I can, get into PR. I can bring up my consultancy again.
So this is going to lead me pretty seamlessly into what is turning into, to me, one of the more meta articles I've ever read, which was the final one that you posted for Adweek.
Crazy, right?
Which is entirely talking about all of the layoffs and furloughs and job and salary reductions that the media industry writ large has dealt with. So taking aside what currently happened, just in the writing of that, what was it like? How much was left on the cutting room floor is the first thing I'm curious about. Like, was it mostly color commentary, or is there news yet to drop that you just couldn't get enough people to say was going to happen?
Yeah. So there are, so it's interesting. Like, I wrote that before the Vox announcement. So I knew that the Vox was coming.
I was about to say, was that news to you then, the Vox announcement, or had you heard that?
I was still reporting that out. I had heard, but I had nothing confirmed. And I know that there's there's more, not necessarily from Vox, but I know that there are a couple of large digital, pure play digital media companies that are going to have similar cuts in the coming week, maybe weeks.
Coming week.
Yeah, look, man, it's not great. You know, publishers are getting hit. Look, so it's the funny thing is, right? So we all got swept up in that pivot to video, and publishers got screwed because Facebook screwed them, and because publishers are dumb. We'll put that aside for a second. Then publishers started to pivot to events, because like events are foolproof. You can't fuck up an event, right? Like people will pay a lot of money to go see interesting things.
And sponsors will pay a lot of money to.
That's right. And nobody in the industry was thinking that a zoonotic pandemic is going to force everyone inside their homes for months on end. And you're seeing all of these companies that have these giant events teams that are they maybe 10 years ago 3 to 5% of their revenue was from events, are now 30 to 50% of their revenue.
Oh yeah, no, events became huge. I know, and not only just on the publishing side, but the buy side very much liked them. Experiential was a word I heard so many times in the last 12 months, or read on an RFP, and a look for that, or an extension into. So then what was it like to be in a media company reporting about, hey, I'm talking to a guy that writes and gets paid for writing. Is it the devil's at the door or the lion's at the door?
I just do the sword of Damocles.
You know what? I don't have a classic upbringing or education, so I couldn't tell you what that meant either.
It's, just the sword of Damocles that hangs over our heads, just waiting to slice.
So yeah, was it for you guys on the media beat? I mean, which is hard, all about week.
It's hard, and media reporting had up until 2008 not been a thing, right? Like media reporting became a thing when the financial crisis happened and media companies started laying off and firing people and shutting down. You might have had a media reporter at a couple of publications, but it wasn't as widespread. But we'll come back to that for a second, because there is something about media reporting that is core to how I built my team and how I think about media reporting. There are a lot of media reporters out there that are more media critics. They focus on what's happening in the newsroom, or they focus what's happening in the boardroom, and that's fine. I am interested in that in a drive-by kind of way, or when it is directly related to the business. I am more interested in how the business works. This is why I've tried to talk to as many ad ops folks as possible, as many media buyers as possible, because I can understand how a media business works by talking to the people that see that flow of money, not necessarily talking about how a newsroom is structured. So as we're covering the media business as a media company, it's hard to not see how all of this plays out for us. And
yeah, that's what, like, I feel like you're almost constantly evaluating what you hear, and like from the good or bad companies, and then looking at what your own company is doing. Like, I feel like it would take an incredible amount of alcohol to get me to stop trying to connect those two dots.
Yes. And when you are a media reporter covering the business of media, and you see your publication doing things that are the opposite of what you are explaining to readers of what not to do, right? It's frustrating. And even talking to media reporters at general publications who cover the business of media, where they have to try, they're trying to explain, like, look, we're covering this, you should be paying attention to what we're saying, because the examples that we're showing as bad examples, we're doing that same behavior. Let's maybe check that a little bit. So it's a challenge when, as a media reporter, and you're taking a step back for a second, never been a crime reporter, never been a war correspondent, where
earlier you described it to us as
yeah,
you've never been a real reporter, which
right.
was
Look, right, like,
I don't know what that means, but
I never had to, if I'm a police reporter, never had to go knock on the door of a family who just lost a person in a crime to get their statement. I mean, that's devastating as a reporter, and that wears you down. Or if you are a war correspondent and you are getting shot at, or you're putting yourself into danger. But at the meta level of writing about media and the destruction of our industry every day, multiple times a day, it's tiring, and it's sad. And the thing is that if you don't treat it with empathy, how do you write a story about a company that just laid off 100 people without trying to put yourself into that person's shoes? And that's,
what is it like when every other day it feels like that? But okay, so without going too far into it, just because we have a little bit more time, I want to wrap this up. But I feel like this is cheating asking this question to a journalist. But using your crystal ball, looking around the corner a bit, do you see anything that's noteworthy, or do you see anything that to you differentiates a good company versus just like the rest of us?
the trick is in how you define value. So news, by definition, is commodity, right? Like, a news event happens and everybody and their mother writes about it. Why should I go to the New York Times versus the Washington Post versus the Wall Street Journal versus MSNBC or whomever that's covering this event that's happening? Why do you go to certain publications? You go because you have a one-way relationship with the writer. It's the same thing with podcasts. You have a one-way relationship with the podcast that you listen to. And where you can, as a media company, where you provide value, is finding those writers that align with your editorial vision. The one of the things that I would tell my staff was, don't worry about it, just fucking write. Because people are coming, they want to know what you know, but they also want to hear like what you have to say. And if you have nothing to say, move on. Like, not in career, just go to the next story. Because you'll writers will lament and bemoan about the blank screen that's staring after doing all of this reporting. I don't understand that. If I, and maybe it's because I have the luxury of writing what I want when I want. My job was to manage a team to get the best out of them and to protect and defend them and advocate for their ideas when necessary. A lot of the things that I did write over the last 2.5 years were either things that I really wanted to say, as well as things that I had to say, so that way other reporters can spend their time focusing on the things that they wanted to say, not having to say, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I think so.
A little bit. I think I can read between the lines there.
Well, I think what's great is your perspective on all these things, and what we want to do is check in from time to time. Hopefully, you'll come back, hang out with us again. Things are going to keep evolving, and we love to keep getting your perspective on stuff. And we'll continue the discussion. Thanks for.
My hope is to we'll get one of these together with a bunch of you journalists, so then I can.
Yeah, I don't know if you want that.
I'll be able to mute you guys. So
I've got nothing but time on my hands now. So what are you guys seeing right now? Right, like how have deals been structured these days?
It still feels very, very early days to me for sort of, call it the second. We're talking inning 4, 5, and 6. We're we've gone back. Buyers seem to have come back from the like, oh shit, we got to get out of here. And now they're the ones that are braver, are the ones that are getting good. What I consider good information are trying to enter. They're just trying to figure out the best way. Like, and I get it, man. How can you be Toyota in this moment, but like actually still being on the top of people's minds? I think this is actually when you start to see who's good at this and who's just been like getting a paycheck.
And that's such a good point, because I think that, so what we learned in 2008 that we are seeing again now is, in a time of recession, publishers lower their ad creative standards. That's why we saw that huge influx of belly fat ads in 2008. And all those whack-a-mole garbage.
Well, yeah, because this is also when people come out of the woodwork guaranteeing revenue, and like if you're desperate for that number, and this is kind of where the feed off that desperation comes.
That's right.
My hope is 12 years later we're a little bit wiser to it, but maybe not always.
So I saw last week, it was at SNL's YouTube page, and there are a couple other places like premium publishers around the web where the pre-roll was a Walmart ad. And the Walmart ad was not about, it wasn't a direct response ad. It was a thank you ad to their employees. And in covering Walmart for the last 10 years, I know that they basically bucket people into 3 groups. There are people who love Walmart because it's the place in their town where they go get their shit, and it's affordable for them, and they are treated like kings. There are people who absolutely hate Walmart because of corporate policies and corporate greed, and no family should be worth however much the Waltons are worth. And then there's the people in the middle. They're like, it's a store. I got to go in. I got to get something. Walmart focuses their marketing historically to that middle group and to the people that love them group. They don't care about the people that don't like them. And it was such an interesting yet obvious insight, but you see how all brands try to be like, all right, we got to talk to this group. Like, this group doesn't like this. We got to change and they start going down this really, really weird path. But to see how Walmart was taking a creative based on thanking their employees, which ties to their broader employee message over the last 5 years. You build that up at scale by running it across platforms, devices, programs, it makes sense. And it's actually good advertising for Walmart in this moment, because it's not telling you, the reader, the viewer, how great Walmart company is. It's telling you, the reader, how great the Walmart staff is, the employees, people like you and me who are suffering like you and me. And it's just really smart. I want to see more of that. I want to see more companies say, you know what? I want to get my message out there, support the journalism that's happening, but not be it in such a shitty way. When I was on the business side, I'm sorry, I know I'm going long. I haven't talked to like humans in a couple of days.
We barely count.
Yeah.
when I was on the business side, the amount of times that I had to tell salespeople and buyers to take off their industry hat and put on their normal human being hat when thinking about the sponsored content that we were producing. Be like, look, if you saw this, would you click on it? Not once did they say yes. So then my immediate response is, then why do you want this? Well, because it's easy and we have money to spend. And it's sad.
Yeah. This is a weird place to have to wrap, Josh, but here we are. You brought me to this place. Seriously though, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for hanging with us.
Definitely going to pick your brain some more. This is an area I am extremely interested in, just because it is such an, who's watching the watchers. Anyways, thank you very much. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, by the way. Thanks for taking time out of your Sunday. See you later.
Yep.
Talk soon, bud. See you, man.
Thank you.